I just need a minute. My brain hurts. Wow, 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 wow. Zelda. I feel like this is something people keep talking about. I don't know if it's like to me or near me or around me or what, but everybody loves this game. And I have no idea what it is. So today we're gonna watch two videos, one from Screen Rant and then one being the most recent Zelda trailer, which I think came out like a month ago. Before we get into that, thank you so much to my channel members. I really appreciate your support. If you want to make sure that your comment is seen by me, then please become a channel member. I do try and answer as many comments as possible, but channel members get special priority. I search for those comments specifically. Also, if you did not already know, I am a self-published author. These are my books. Magic required and dominion required follow a Celtic demigod trying to seek a redemption he is not sure he deserves. Bloodkin and Curses follows a newly turned vampire going to magic school and learning about all some cool stuff. They're available as audiobooks, ebooks, and paperbacks. Thank you so much if you have read them. Thank you even more if you have reviewed them. And if you're just here to watch some Zelda stuff, let's get into it. The Legend of Zelda Timeline Explained. So I have also been told that there are multiple timelines depending on what you do in the game, so I'm curious to see what this video is going to be like.
There's a new Zelda game on the horizon, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Shut up and take my money!
And with a new
Literally
game in
what
the
everybody's
franchise
saying.
comes questions of where it's going to fit within the official Zelda timeline. Something that is beyond the scope of this video, admittedly, but to help all of you Nintendo fans out there with your theorizing, how about we take a look at the timeline as we know it today, shall we? In case you aren't aware, the Zelda timeline is far from simple. While most franchise timelines are a basic straight line, the Zelda one actually splits at one point, creating three separate yet equally relevant timelines. But before we get to that, we should discuss the events that occurred before the fracturing of time. Stay tuned for that. At the beginning of time, the world was created by three goddesses: the goddess of power, the goddess of wisdom, and the goddess of courage. Once they finished bringing life where before there was none, they ascended to heaven and left behind an object known as the Triforce, in which they had imbued their essences. They entrusted this powerful artifact to Hylia, a younger goddess who watched over it until the Demon King Demise came calling, attacking all of the good people of the world. To protect the people, Hylia sent some of them into the sky, while she stayed to fight. Even though she was able to best Demise, it wasn't without a cost. She was badly wounded.
A princess girl?
Before passing on, she gave up her godly powers, beginning a cycle where she would be reincarnated as the one destined to protect the Triforce from evil for all time. Pay attention to that little bit, as she winds up being not the only one who gets resurrected over and over and over.
Is she Zelda? Did they say that? I'm dumb. What's her name?
Before there was none, they ascended to heaven and left behind an object known as the goddess who watched over it until the artifact to Hylia, a younger goddess who watched over it until she would be reincarnated as the one destined to protect the Triforce from evil for all time. Pay attention
I know
to that
this. Don't tell me.
As she winds up being not the only one who gets resurrected over and over and over. That brings us forwards to the first actual game in the timeline, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. In this game, Link, the reincarnated version of Hylia's chosen champion, was tasked with rescuing Zelda, the reincarnated Hylia, who had been taken to the surface below the clouds by a devoted follower of Demise, who had hoped to return the demon to the world. That didn't go super well for him, as Link got a hold of another ancient artifact known as the Master Sword, with which he was able to strike the villain down, keep the world safe. The Master Sword is another reoccurring thing. I'm not really going to mention it a lot of times, but just assume that it's almost always there. Generations later, we saw the events of the Minish Cap, which is actually the first game to take place entirely within the land of Hyrule proper. This once again saw the hero reincarnated and tasked with saving the world, this time getting his hands on the Light Force, an artifact legally distinct from the Triforce. Oh, and he also got his signature hat, which in this case was also a bird. This game was a little weird, everybody. Following this was actually a near direct sequel, The Four Swords, which actually adds very little to the overall timeline of the series. So I'm not really going to talk about it too much here, especially because the next entry that we got to talk about is a doozy. As arguably the most well-known game in the entire franchise, the Ocarina of Time holds an incredibly important place in the timeline. In this game, the typical story plays out. Ganondorf, a man who embodies pure evil, kidnapped Princess Zelda, and Link set out to save her. This time, though, the journey wasn't just across the land of Hyrule, but across time itself as well. As the game began, Link was just a young boy, barely old enough to hold a sword. But throughout the course of the game, he was sealed away for 7 years, during which time Ganondorf ravaged the land, bringing unspeakable horrors to the inhabitants of the kingdom. Emerging as an adult, Link stepped up to the plate and took on the villain face to face. This is actually where the timeline splits, as 3 possible outcomes come from this battle. First is one where Link failed to defeat the evil that plagued Hyrule. The second is where he won the day and was returned to the time before his adventure began so he could live out his life properly. And the third was where Link won, subscribed to Screen Rant, as you all probably should, and disappeared as an adult. Let's talk about the first of these,
subscribe to Screen
While the
Rant.
first timeline, the Fallen Hero timeline as it's called, is easily the most depressing of them all, not everything about it is terrible. After the Hero of Time fell in battle against Ganon, the bestial form of Ganondorf, the evil monstrosity was able to claim all 3 pieces of the Triforce and combine them. Shortly before Zelda and a group of sages arrived and sealed him away. Peace once again returned to Hyrule, at least for a little while. Eventually, darkness fell on the world again, and a new Link arose and made an effort to stop a dark wizard from unsealing Ganon, setting in motion the events of A Link to the Past. This game had a direct sequel, Link's Awakening, which saw Link set out across the sea in an attempt to find some more quests to go on in order to further his training. A storm swept in and destroyed his ship, and he awakened on the mysterious Koholint Island. After exploring for a while, Link learned that the only way home was to awaken the sleeping windfish, a being that had literally dreamed the island into existence. So waking him up meant effectively destroying the land and its people. Admittedly, not an easy choice to make. It's okay though, because it was all a dream anyways. Or was it?
I don't know.
After that on the timeline comes the events of the Oracle of Ages and the Oracle of Seasons. This pair of games, which could be played in basically either order and then linked together, followed Link as he went up against Twin Rova, Ganon's surrogate mothers, who sought to reincarnate him via some rather nefarious means. When does it ever not involve nefarious means?
Great question.
At some point after these games, the Triforce was split into 3 segments once again, which was not great, but it played into the plots of future stories. The next game, though, was A Link Between Worlds. This game saw Link learning of a separate, alternate version of the world, due to being tasked by Hilda, an alternate Zelda, with finding the fabled sages to seal Ganon away once again and stopped an evil wizard named Yuga. Turned out, though, that Hilda was actually the one who sent Yuga to Hyrule in the first place, all as part of a ploy to get a hold of Hyrule's Triforce, as their Triforce was gone. After settling that whole mess, this Link hopped on over to Triforce Heroes, which didn't do much storyline-wise. So moving on. Finally, we come to the original Legend of Zelda. This game might be incredibly influential in terms of its impact on gaming in general, but in terms of the plot, not a lot actually happened.
This looks like Chip's Challenge.
It's as bog standard of a Zelda game as it gets, which we're gonna give it a pass considering that it literally set that standard, so it's kind of to be expected. And then there was Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, which was honestly just more of the same, but this time as a side-scroller, because fun. And that brings us to the end of one split timeline. On to the next. Now we come to the child timeline, where Link returned to being a kid after defeating Ganon. The first game in the timeline is the iconic Majora's Mask, during which the child hero of time relived the same...
I just need a minute. My brain hurts. Wow. That's really cool from like a writing perspective that you could be like, oh, which ending do I want to write more from? But holy shit, there's a lot happening.
Over and over again, all while attempting to save the land of Termina from a giant moon that was coming crashing down. Many generations later came the events of Twilight Princess. During this game, a reincarnated Ganondorf was banished to the Twilight Realm for his crimes, only to then usurp the throne within that other world, taking control away from Midna, the Twilight Princess, who turned to Link, tasking him with stopping Ganondorf and returning her kingdom to her control. Fun fact about this game, by the way, this is the first non-multiplayer game to feature multiple Links in it. Technically, while traveling around in this adventure, the hero of Twilight Link encountered a being simply known as the hero's spirit, a skeletal being that helped Link learn a bunch of skills that aided him along his journey. That spirit is actually the spirit of the Hero of Time from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Which is a pretty flippin' cool detail if you ask me.
Yeah,
just try not to think about the fact that Link is the reincarnated version of him, so it's kind of just him twice. It's
yeah, it
the
is.
rather
No, I'm
short
into
child
that.
timeline is
Game
rounded
twice.
out by Four Swords Adventures, a sort of pseudo-sequel, mainly just in terms of gameplay, to the original Four Swords. Like its predecessor, though, its actual impact on things is debatable at best. Now we have our final timeline, the adult timeline, which occurred when the hero of time successfully defeated Ganon, but subsequently vanished as an adult without a trace.
Right.
Because of this, Link wasn't around when Ganon broke free and began to once again wreak havoc on the world. In order to quell his villainy, the gods flooded the world, turning mountaintops into pretty much the only dry land around. This set the stage for the Wind Waker, where Link once again stepped out to take on Ganon, this time with the help of Tetra, who was basically just Zelda, it turns out. After Wind Waker came its direct sequel, Phantom Hourglass, which saw Link and Tetra traveling across the Great Sea to try to find a land suitable enough to found a new Hyrule, which they successfully achieved, as roughly 100 years later came Spirit Tracks. In this game, Link and a recently deceased spirit of Zelda traveled across New Hyrule, trying to deal with problems arising from the ancient history of the land upon which the fledgling kingdom was founded. That game actually gets a little bit more guff than I think it deserves, just because like the whole gimmick of trains, a lot of people are like, that's kind of childish, but it's actually really good. But with that, we reach the end of the official Legend of Zelda timeline. However, as you might have noticed, there are a few games that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I did notice
I'm
that.
not talking about the CDI games. We never talk about those.
I'm not talking about those either.
The few games that don't seem to fit on any part of the timeline are the games that belong to the Era of Calamity, as fans have taken to calling it. That would be both of the Hyrule Warriors games, Breath of the Wild, and the forthcoming Tears of the Kingdom.
Literally the only thing about Zelda I know.
A common theory amongst fans is that these games exist at the very end of all three timelines, seemingly being some sort of convergence point between them, bringing things back into one linear timeline.
That's so cool!
The main evidence for this is the fact that these games seem to share similar traits with all of them, with things such as specific references to races that only existed in one specific timeline, and references to legendary events that occurred in separate timelines.
That's so cool, I hope that's what happens.
However, until Nintendo gives us an explicit answer, it's really hard to say for sure.
Wow,
so far,
that's so cool.
They aren't telling, but we can pretty safely assume that it definitely fits at the end of the chronology in some way. Now, we know that Tears of the Kingdom is the sequel to Breath of the Wild, but what if it's not? This timeline is so screwy as is, so what are the chances that it fits into an alternate timeline that is just similar to Breath of the Wild? Something to think about. Probably not accurate, but definitely something to think about.
Cool, very interesting. So it's all just like the games come out and they're all over the place? Like you don't know where the game fits in the timeline when you, like you don't know, but like they just put games wherever they want? That's very interesting. That's cool. Okay, so here's one that fits maybe at the end. That's also such a cool idea that these games, Breath of the Wild and whatever the other ones he said, because Breath of the Wild is literally the only one I know anything about, and I don't know anything about it, that they wrap up all, like they bring it back to one timeline. So cool! Oh, also they all look different, and like I'm like made of questions, but I don't even know what they are. Oh. Do you have a parachute? Can you fly? Oh. I don't know why that kind of scared me. It's very pretty. Oh, good. Oh my god, I'm remembering now, Breath of the Wild was so friggin' creepy and weird, and the music did a really good job of being creepy and weird, and I feel exactly the same.
Zelda, we rely on your knight and that legendary sword he carries.
Oh.
Our last line of defense will be Link.
She's very short.
Link.
I don't know why this makes me happy. I don't understand anything. It just makes me a little happy. Oh, I hate this. Platforming. I think I'm just bad at it, if that's what that's called. I'd like that. Hit things with arrows, I like that.
I know why I am here.
Why are you here?
It's something only I can do.
Do not look away. You witness a king's revival and the birth of his new world.
Okay, let's go!
But you are not alone.
Link. You are our final hope.
Oh, that was very exciting in the end, too. I don't really understand how to play that game. Like, I'm running and jumping and swinging and... Oh, right, it's on Nintendo Switch and I know nothing about that at all.
Link. You must find me.
Oh. 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 Okay. So overwhelming. I can't even explain how overwhelming that timeline stuff is, but the idea that this brings things back to one timeline is so cool to me. I think that's so interesting. I think I would really enjoy reading a series of books that had that kind of thing happen in it. That would be really cool. How do I write that? No, I don't need more ideas. I got too many ideas as it is. Got too much to do already. Anyways, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Thank you again to my channel members. I hope you guys are all happy and healthy, taking care of yourselves and each other. Please let me know any thoughts as always in the comment section, any recommendations. Catch me on Twitch. And as always, until next time, may the force be with you. Live long and prosper. And I'll be back.